Okay, dear students, today we are going to study about Milton's Paradise Lost, Book 1, its text summary. Book 1 is very important book. Uh, just a minute. Yes. Book 1 of Paradise Lost begins. Sorry. Begins with prologue in which Milton performs the traditional epic task of invoking the muse and starting his purpose. So it's a sort of epic, and an epic, it has been tradition there. Whoever writes an epic used to get some sort of help, inspiration from muse. So Milton has also exploited the same tradition and he invokes the classical muse Urania, but also refers to her as the heavenly muse because of his religious or Christian belief. He's not going to seek directly from Urania, but his Urania is different, that's heavenly one, implying the Christian nature of his work. He always says that poem will deal with man's disobedience toward God and the results of that disobedience. We know that Paradise Lost after we people, after Adam disobeyed God when he was supposed not to go near the particular tree and he went there. According to Christianity, it was an apple tree. According to the Muslim, it was wheat tree. Anyhow, he was supposed not to touch or eat the fruit of that particular plant, but Adam went there and he ate, and consequently he was expelled from heaven. It is said that he was trapped by the snake. Snake entered into uh, heaven and said that it's better to eat the fruit of that particular plant, and he ate and he was expelled out. So he concludes the prologue by saying he will attempt to justify God's ways to men. So he tells in first 25 lines especially that what was the purpose of that particular poem. Uh, Following the prologue and invocation, Milton begins the epic with the description of Saturn. Saturn has been eulogized, so that's why he has charged that he has magnified the character of Saturn instead of Adam. He was also charged by critics that he was of Saturn's side without knowing it. So lying on his back with the other rebellious angels, chained on a lake of fire, the poem thus commences in the middle of the story, as epics traditionally do. Saturn, who had been Lucifer, the greatest angel once, and his compatriots warred against God. They were defeated and cast from heaven into fires of hell. According to Christian mythology, there was a regular war that went between the good angels and bad angels, and finally God used his thunderbolt, his power, and to get absolute power, and Saturn, along with his followers, was defeated. So we move to the next slide. So lying on the lake, uh, just a minute. Lying on the lake, Saturn is described as gigantic, very big. So all his qualities, his shield, his power, his truth, his, so a lot of things you can see there. So he is compared to a Titan or a Leviathan. Next to Saturn lies Beelzebub, that's the chief command. Saturn second in command. After Saturn, he was in power. He was to lead all the troops against God. Saturn comments on how Beelzebub has been transformed from the worse by the punishment of God. Still, he adds that it is his intention to continue the struggle against God, saying, so this is a very important line, often quoted. It's maxim too. Most of the time, people use it, and you can also use. So a lot of maxims we can see can be found in Paradise Lost. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. So Basically, it's power of ruling. So he wants to rule irrespective of the fact either it's hell or heaven. Authority is so all important lines, often quoted lines, are part of Saturn's speech. Interestingly, so with effort, uh, just a minute. With effort, Saturn is able to free himself from his chains and rise from the fire. He flies to barren plain, followed by Beelzebub. From the plain, Saturn calls the other fallen angels to join him, and one by one they rise from the lake and fly to their leader to listen to him. Leader is calling them, and all of these satanic forces are evil angels assembled around their leader. And then he makes a sort of a speech over their one. So as they come, Milton is able to list the major devils that now occupy hell. So these are the names of devils, of warriors who had been fighting against God, and finally they were in hell. Each devil is introduced in a formal cataloging of demons. These fallen angels think that they have been escaped from their chains through their own power, but Milton makes it clear that God alone has allowed them to do this. Uh, so the devil army is large and impressive, but also aware of its recent ignominious defeat. Bigger defeat cannot be forgotten, should be remembered. Saturn addresses them and rallies them. He tells them that they still have power and what their purpose will be to oppose God, adding, war then war, open or understood, must be resolved. So, this is how they are intended to fight against God. So, this speech inspires the devil host, and under Mammon's direction, they immediately began work on a capital city for their hellish empire. They find mineral resources in the mountains of hell and quickly begin to construct a city. Under the direction of their chief architect Mulciber, they construct a great tower that comes to symbolize the capital of hell, Pandemonium. Pandemic word is basically from pandemonium, and this is neologism. In fact, if we can see, is from critical point of view, it's Milton's invention for hell. And recent pandemic word that we people are using out of coronavirus, it's this word's origin is pandemonium. So keep in mind, dear student, you must know that what is the origin of this word pandemic. So the devil army flying this way and that is compared to a great swarms of bees. And another important thing, this word pandemonium was for the first time invented, used by Milton, and later this word has been used a lot in other contexts. So when the work is done and the capital completed, they all assemble for the first great council there. So we see their um, analysis. So Milton begins Paradise Lost in the traditional epic manner with a prologue invoking the muse. So I have given you summary of first 25 or 30 lines like that one, and now I'm going to tell you its critical analysis, that what sort of epic it is. And epic has basically is called long narrative poem. It has particular way, it has particular similes, metaphors, language, each and everything is extraordinarily used. It is always going to talk about certain grand theme, and here we can see to justify the ways of God to man is one of the grand and great theme. Its style, its diction, its each and everything is well chiseled. It's an extraordinary work. It is considered in poetry one of the top thing. It's the, you can say, the queen of poetry. We can't say that it is something comparable with other forms or genres of poetry. It is something extraordinary, and it has some sort of tradition in epics, in primary epics and secondary epic. Primary epics were actually the oral epics one, which were transferred for just like Homer's and Aeneid's, like that one. These epics were not written one; they were sung from. They moved from heart to heart. But later there came the tradition of writing them, and Milton has also followed the same footsteps, but with certain changes. And one of the important thing is that his heavenly muse is not pagan muse, is a different one, is the divine one. So he calls her the heavenly muse and says that he will sing of man's first disobedience and the fruit of that forbidden tree. So these are the first lines. The story of Adam and Eve and their fall from grace. As the prologue continues, it becomes apparent that this muse is more than just a classical Urania, but also a Christian muse who resides on Mount Sinai. In fact, the Holy Spirit, you know that just like Jibreel alayhi salam, who used to visit Moses, Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, and later the Holy Prophet, so that was special sort of messenger bringing from messages and verses from God. So Milton further emphasizes in the prologue that this theme will be man's disobedience to God's will. Actually, God said not to go there, not to touch the fruit of that, to not eat the fruit of that thing. It was fruit of knowledge, in fact. Inquisitiveness is by nature. We always move the corner that is said that it is, you shouldn't move there, implying not only Adam's disobedience but all mankind from first to last. He does add that his subject will include the great man, Christ, and who saved all others from the original disobedience. Moreover, his intention will be to justify the ways of God to men through the aid of eternal providence. By justify, Milton means more than simply to explain. He means that he will demonstrate that God's actions in this regard to men are just. Whatever God has decided, said it's just, and we have to accept it. The goal suggests that Milton was not bothered by any sense of false modesty, an idea understood by his statement that he will write in a high style and attempt a purpose never tried before in English. So the only true poignant line in this prologue is Milton's request of the muse: "What in me is dark, illumine. Bring light, what's dark, which can't be seen, one, getting help." With its oblique reference to Milton's blindness. Actually, when he started writing, we have studied in his biography too, at that time he was blind. A subject he will turn to more directly to the prologue that begins Book 3. At no point in this prologue and invocation does Milton mention Saturn, who, though he is the main character of the poem, is not the actual subject here. So, following the invocation and prologue, Milton continues in the epic style by beginning in medias res, in the middle of things. Saturn, so it's a start one. It start not from the end or start. It's the from middle. It has been its start. Saturn is the first scene, lying in the pit of hell. That a great religious epic focuses on Saturn, presents him first, and in many ways makes him the hero of the poem. Is certainly surprising and something of a risk on Milton's part. Milton does not want his audience to emphasize with Saturn, yet Saturn is an attractive character struggling against great odds. Instead of Adam, we can say it's Saturn who has been struggling, working. So that's why it has been said that Milton is part of Saturn's party without knowing it. So the power that Saturn asserts and thinks he has is illusory. His power to act drives only from God, and his struggle against God has already been lost. To the modern audience, Saturn may seem heroic as he struggles to make a heaven of hell, but the original audience knew that Milton's line confirmed that Saturn's war with God had been lost absolutely before the poem begins. God grants Saturn and the other devils the power to act for God's purpose, not theirs. Also, at this point in the narrative, Saturn is at his most attractive. He has just fallen from heaven, where he was the closest angel to God. He has not completely lost the angelic aura that was his in heaven. At the As the poem progresses, the reader will see that Saturn's character and appearance grow worse. Milton has successfully structured his work to show the consequences of Saturn's action. So, the catalogue of demons that follows Saturn's escape from the burning lake follows an epic pattern of listing heroes. Uh, Heroes, although here the list is of villains. This particular catalogue seems almost an intentional parody of Homer's catalogue of Greek ships and heroes in Book 1 of the Iliad. The catalogue is a means for Milton to list many of the fallen angels as well as a way to account for many of the gods in pagan religions. So they were originally among the angels who rebelled from God. So the final part of Book 1 is the construction of Pandemonium, the capital of hell. So this is what I've said. That even this word has been pandemic has been taken from it. A certain unintentional humor pervades this book section of book one as well as Mammon's argument in book two. In both cases, a sense of civic pride seems to overcome the doubters that they act on the idea that hell is bad, but with a few improvements we can make it lots better, even attractive. In both Mammon and the hellish architect Mulciber, the attitude of the mayor, whose small town has been bypassed by the interstate, comes out. So Milton's real goal here is to establish pandemonium, a word which Milton himself coined from the Latin word pan, all, and demonium, demons. So there are all satanic powers. Pandemonium means all Saturns are there. Thus, the capital of hell is literally the place of all demons. Now, with the passage of time, the word came to mean any place of wild disorder, noise, confusion, like we can see currently pandemic is going. This word's origin is from there. This all over the world crisis problem. So this idea is subtly emphasized with Milton's choice of Mulciber as the architect. Mulciber was another name for Hephaestus, the Greek god of food, who was tossed from Olympus by a drunken Zeus. So this was all about the start on certain critical remarks too. Thank you for